Hey, Ryan, thanks for coming back to the Making Math Moments That Better podcast. It's been over or just about 2 years since we last connected, and I'm sure there are many challenges that you've overcome since then. But as always, once you start working on a challenge, new ones seem to emerge. So do us a favor here, Ryan. Remind everyone where are you coming to us from? What is your education context? And how are things going in your world recently?
Sure. Well, thank you, Kyle and John, for having me back. Really appreciate it. My name is Ryan Kinzler. I am an 8th grade math teacher in Pittsburg, Pennsylvania. We're going to be entering year 9 this year, I think. So, yeah, I've been pretty busy since the last time I spoke with you guys. And actually, I got to admit, I spoke with you 2 years ago in the summer, and that school year was probably my most effective school year.
Wow.
To be very honest with you.
Wow. Tell us a little more about
that. I want to hear all about
what makes it more, because I think if you're listening to this live, you're like, 2 years ago, something crazy was going on too. So so people are like, that was our worst year. And Ryan's like, this is my best year. So Ryan, fill us in. Like, what do you feel like? What was so great about it?
Yeah. So when we talked last time, we talked about a lot how there's so many little tiny maneuvers that you can do in the classroom and how to kind of combine them all effectively, because they don't necessarily always fit with each other. There's like different avenues you could take. And I guess I tried a lot more. My students were really engaging, and there was a lot more conversation, especially at whiteboards, that allowed for some of those little things that I was afraid to try a bunch of different ones and how they would work. They actually all worked. The students were very resilient. There's actually other adults in the room like flabbergasted at how well they were doing compared to previous years. So it was almost reassuring that when you take chances, sometimes things work out. So that was really, really cool.
I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah. And the ironic part is the year after that, so last year, complete opposite. So I was actually like really defeated at the end of the year. So when you guys reached out and said, hey, you want to come back on, I kind of like lit a little spark. So thank you for doing that, because I needed that for sure.
Cool. Awesome. We'll definitely dig into, say, this last year for sure, and kind of get your opinion on what you think the change was. But before we do that, you mentioned, there's a lot of little maneuvers that, someone has to put into place to kind of create that environment. What would you say was the most effective maneuver that you put into place, and why do you think that was the case?
This might sound weird, but listening was the most effective maneuver. Like, we talk about all these things that teachers can do, like all these different tasks, but listening to your students and being patient and not trying to give feedback right away, allowing that feedback to organically come out and come out in a way that is going to be receptive by them instead of you trying to rush to feedback, is probably the biggest thing I learned there. And kind of allowing them to be themselves. So like, my classroom definitely got louder. So people from the outside might be like, it's chaotic in there, he doesn't know what he's doing. But there was a passing of the ownership sort of thing. So instead of you telling them what to do, you were there as an assistant, as a guiding voice instead of the demanding voice, if that makes sense.
It makes complete sense. And what would you like when you kind of made that shift? And I think a lot of teachers who make that shift, and I think a lot of people who are listening to this are kind of like you, kind of like us, they're willing to step into trying new things. But I think they work with a lot of teachers, and you probably work with a lot of teachers too, who are still hesitant to kind of like step that way. And I think what we're hearing, and this is the case in our schools, the teachers we work with too, is like, if I go down that path, if I take that step, I might not be able to cover all the curriculum, and that's a problem for me. How did you, like, when you made that shift to say, hey, I'm gonna focus more on listening and allowing my students to kind of give you the feedback, they're taking that ownership? Could you still cover all the curriculum, Ryan? Like, is there some sort of trade-off that you did there? I'm curious there, because I'm sure there's lots of eager teachers going like, that's a barrier that we need to overcome.
So no, I did not cover every single topic. However, by listening, the topics you did cover, you were able to cover better. And that time, getting them to think mathematically, actually, when they're placed in a situation then where there's something they did not know, I'm not saying they're going to achieve 100% of the time, but they had a better baseline to jump into it, to have a chance on some of that stuff. So instead of covering everything like sort of kind of well,
right,
I covered less things really well, and there was a couple things I didn't get to, and like obviously disappointed that I didn't get to them, but it didn't really, like, it's ironic that we're bringing this up because the thing I want to talk about is success later, but it didn't affect like scores or grades or anything as much as you would think it would.
Awesome. You remind me, when we sort of went down this path of problem-based approach, listening, some big pieces that are jumping out at me from this conversation, this importance of listening and observing. And that can only really happen when you give students the opportunity to actually productively struggle, right? Like, they have to actually engage in problem solving in order for you to really listen and observe, right? You're giving them that opportunity to chat with those neighbors, to actually get to, sort of the root of the issue or the root of the problem. And, when you don't necessarily explicitly cover, as we might do in a traditional setting, and I say traditional, like gradual release of responsibility sort of approach, what I found was I would, and maybe this is something that might be helpful, maybe you're already doing this, but what I found is I would sneak in some problems of these topics that we didn't cover explicitly. I would put them on assessments as some of the sort of the next step questions. So, folks who listen to the podcast quite a bit, they would know that we would try to do some recent content. We'd also spiral back and do some older content so that it doesn't slip away. But I would also once in a while slip in something we haven't done, just to see how they do. And what you would find, and I'm hearing this in your explanation, is that because students are now using their brains, they're thinking, right? They're actually working through problems. If you give them a problem that is contextual and, may not have been explicitly covered or uncovered in your classroom, they can do some pretty impressive things with it. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to see how far they can get, how effective or efficient they are. And that can also influence maybe how you bring that into the classroom. So, whether it be through a warm-up where you introduce one of these problems from a topic you haven't explicitly brought up in class yet, you can still actually cover the curriculum. It just isn't going to look in the same way as it may have done in the past, or it might not be 3 full days like we may have done in the past, but you've actually given students some of that exposure. I love it. Now, I want to roll back before we dig into, sort of some of your next steps and some of the things you're thinking about. But I also want to go back, and I'm wondering about how important do you feel it was to just have the coaching mentorship sort of conversation before that school year 2 years ago. So about 2 years ago, we had that conversation. You came out and, it sounded like you had some intentionality in what you were trying to do, what you were trying to accomplish. Have you thought or reflected on that? And I'm always curious about it because I find that when I have these sorts of conversations, it's like my actions, it's like I feel more confident to go out and try some of these things because I feel like I've got that support, right? I've got, like a bit of a backing there instead of it just being an idea I thought of one night when I, woke up in the middle of the night. What do you feel that role is? And I'm wondering, have you been trying to search maybe for a colleague or someone that you might be able to lean on to sort of gain that sort of mentorship experience over, the long term, or I guess on a regular basis?
Yeah, so no, I really think it was beneficial to talk with you guys in the summer like I did. I'm gonna be honest, I think if I talked to you in like November, it wouldn't have
Hmm.
I would have been more hesitant
Mm,
because there was already a routine established.
Right.
So I will say that doing that in the summer helped because there was no routine established. So you got to establish it. You know what I mean? It was like more freedom to try
Yep.
things.
Yep.
As far as like mentorship stuff, so the ironic part is I actually had my first student teacher that year too.
Okay.
And that was like I got to see it from that point of view and try to share my thoughts, I guess, with them, and they were very receptive of it. And she
mm,
did a great job. But I think that that process as well kind of helped empower me to be like, all right, I can share my ideas with other people, and they're going to be more receptive of it. And there is, actually is a seventh grade teacher that we bounce ideas off each other a lot. And it's been helpful because she's kind of adopted some of my things, and then I've taken some of her things that I've been able to tweak for my
Exactly.
class as well. So I think the taking the step is the first thing before necessarily being comfortable talking with other people, because you want to have like the evidence that you know what you're doing. So the personal evidence, like obviously there's evidence out there, but personal evidence that you know what you're doing, that thing first before I was comfortable talking with other people about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Of course. Of course. And I think, that whole mentorship, partnership, dynamic that we get when we have a student teacher, or when you have a co-teacher. Some teachers, work with somebody, every day. My wife in the kindergarten classroom, works with another teacher in her classroom all day long. And when you have that, it's like you create this little mastermind group, where you're bouncing ideas off each other. You're sharing, like, that is so invaluable to, to our productiveness, in a sense, to, push our, learning forward, and also to kind of share ideas. It's super important, and I think partly necessary to kind of like grab someone and go like, what are you doing
Yeah.
today? What are you doing tomorrow? Like, what does your lesson look like that on a regular basis? And I'm glad that you had that kind of mentorship role, because you get probably just as much as they get from that partnership.
Yeah, and I will say, like, without having someone too, it'd be easy to become complacent and think
For
that,
sure.
oh, I took that step, I'm done, I'm good. Like, there's
Mhm.
always
Totally.
more to grow on. And once you take that step yourself, like, it's easier to keep going forward if there's
Hmm.
other people that have already tried things too that you can bounce ideas off.
I love it. I love it. That's it's really interesting. And I think one of the most important pieces, and it might look and sound different for those who are listening, like some may feel as you have, right? And thinking like, okay, I want to try a little bit of this before I maybe approach someone. Some others might be like, I really need to just have that conversation and get somebody else's thoughts before I even dig in. I just don't have, it's just not making sense in my mind. And I can't take that first step without having that conversation. But however you choose to enter it, I think finding those people, and maybe it's in your own school, call it like a mastermind. I think it's amazing when you have a associate teacher, as they would call them here, and a pre-service teacher working together in a classroom, because you have a different dynamic, right? And it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that the associate teacher has to have all the answers, but more or less that you have different things you can bring to the table, right? Like they might have maybe, some of the newest tech
Yeah.
sort of, tool or something that might be helpful. And you might have those more nuanced pedagogical moves, right? Like if you would have
Right.
said, maneuver, like the maneuvers in a math classroom. To me, when I was a student teacher, I would have been like, I have no idea what you're talking about, right? Like I had no idea what
Yes.
that could possibly look like, right? So, there's a great dynamic there, whether you're at a similar stage, whether there's someone who's maybe ahead in the journey and, you're not quite there yet, or whether you're just kind of all over the map and everyone's just trying to figure things out. Finding those, those people you can have those conversations with, I think is really, really important. And I really liked your idea of, the summertime thing, when we're in the summer or when we're in our off season as educators, there's this need to recharge, to, maybe shut down. But there's also a need for us to kind of reflect, right? And think back on what worked, what didn't work so well, and what routines do I want to shift. And I really liked how you commented on that. So I want to definitely dig into what is on your mind lately.
Sure.
It sounds like you've had some really great, moves in the right direction. But as we mentioned at the top of the episode, of course, as soon as you start making progress in one area, you start to uncover new challenges, right? It's like renovating a home. You take down the wall and then you find out there's this behind there, and you keep digging and there's more and more to do. But I think that's what makes this career so rewarding. So what is on your mind lately? And let us in so we can dig in here with you.
Yeah. So like I said, 2 years ago, great year. Fantastic. Last year, pretty much the polar opposite. I mean, we don't need to get into the details of why. It was just it was like the perfect storm of everything. But the thing that really opened my eyes to the question I had for you guys is looking back, and again, this is not like my stance on state test scores or anything, but looking back, so I teach 2 classes. I teach a Math 8 class and an Algebra 1 class in 8th grade. We also have geometry in 8th grade, just so you kind of get a hierarchy of where kids are there. My Math 8 kids, year after year, like on state tests, are growing. Like last year it was about plus 350 points. All right. My algebra kids every year are falling. Like about 200 points last year. So that kind of brought me to this question. And is it okay if I ask you guys to like give me a definition of something?
Sure.
Okay. Because I wrote one too, so you're not like left out here. What is your definition of success in your classroom? So question. I don't know if you want me to go first to give you time to think, or if you want to go first, or
I'm curious. No. I'm curious to hear yours.
Okay.
And then I want, and then I'm also, I don't, I definitely don't want to plant any seeds, but also it's going to give me some time to actually reflect on that.
And the listeners should do that too, right? Yeah. It might even be worth a pause for those who are right now.
For sure.
All right.
I love it, Ryan. But I'm super curious. So, and I'm guessing too that it's probably dynamic, right? So I bet you like 2 months ago, your definition was this, and like over time, and this is almost something like, you're giving me some ideas of like probably something we should routinely be, whether it's like setting a reminder in your calendar to be thinking about that, because I think it's really easy for us to just assume we know what success is. Like we know the really far down the road, goal. John and I talk a lot about like, if you meet someone 5 years from now, what do you hope that student says? Like, those are a lot of the things that I'm looking for. But I think there's also some important factors as well for us, especially when you're looking at this from like a year to year, right? Like Math 8 to Algebra 1, like what would be a success. So I'm super curious here, and it is early in the morning for those who are listening. So it's like forcing our brains to kind of like maybe work harder than I thought we were going to have to today, but I really,
sorry about that.
Looking forward to it. Yeah.
So and there's a reason why, like I came up with this definition too, because, just background, I think there's almost 3 different definitions of success that are portrayed to a student based on different adults situations here, and their own self identity, I guess, for lack of a better word there. So I can get into that later too, but my working definition for right now, and this could easily change by the time I'm done talking with you guys, but My definition is a student had success is if the student has the ability and the understanding to perform better in subsequent math classes than my own class.
I love
That's
that.
my working definition right now, because like,
Got it.
okay, they could have made short-term gains here, but setting them up for long-term gains.
Right.
I love
That's
that.
that's my
Yeah, that's great.
working definition now. And I can get into like how I don't know if that really aligns with the way I think kids or parents or administrators see it. Which is why this topic got brought up, but I'll
Right.
turn the floor over to you guys.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I like what pops into my mind when you say that. And I'm like, wow, that is awesome. Now, the one wonder I would have with that too, and this isn't to maybe limit that definition or to, get us thinking, unproductively about things too, is, there may be this time where you reach a point in a student's journey where, where things do get, let's say, very abstract, or their ability to perform at that same level of rigor might not be as in depth. However, as I'm saying that, I'm also reflecting myself and thinking, putting them, maybe it's almost like the wording around like putting them in a position where they can flourish, or achieve at a greater level of understanding. I love the know, understand, and do piece. I love those three pieces. Like if they know, understand, and can do in my classroom, and that positions them well so that they have a good chance of assuming all of the things line up, and they put in the hard work. I'm going to also argue that there's this, like, as we go down that journey, as you pass algebra 1 into algebra 2, and as you continue down towards calculus, it's almost like the amount of effort and thinking and all of those things compound. So it's like a beautiful compound interest sort of situation. And it makes me really reflect right now on like what exactly do I want? I want all students to be successful in those areas, but I wonder, is that the path for all students, and does that mean they're not successful if they don't do that thing?
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, when I think about my students in my classrooms, I think I want to set them up for success in future years, Ryan, just like you. But I think I can kind of boil it more down into, say, like building confidence. Like I think everything that when you think about a classroom and you think about everything that you're putting into and trying to change and trying to help students see themselves as mathematicians and help them become better thinkers and problem solvers and be resilient. I think sometimes I can think, like, if I can help them do all of that, but also, build their confidence so that they're not only, because if they have confidence in the math that we're doing now and confidence in the math class and confidence in math in general, I think that does carry forward. Because, one of the biggest lessons I try to talk to my own kids about, my 3 daughters, is that I don't want to be the one that rushes in and fixes things for them, right? Like I don't want to be that math teacher that's like, let me just show you how to do this, because you're going to go back to class and it's going to be a different thing. I think one of the big lessons we try to help them with is that you're going to run into, or you're going to have teachers or people in your lives that you disagree with, you don't get along with, you don't feel are doing, the best job that they could be. And it's all about kind of like having that resilience and confidence to kind of accept that and kind of persevere through that. And I know that when I think about my students and going like, next year, you possibly could get another teacher who puts a huge emphasis back on the abstract and not the conceptual understanding. And there's no like connection, and they're going to kind of like detract from your confidence in mathematics. Right. And if I can instill your confidence this year, when you get to that situation, if you can, maneuver around that yourself as a student and go like, this is where I am in regards to what's happening in the classroom, and I can persevere through that because of the confidence I already have coming into it, I think that's a big win. that's what I try to tell my own kids, is that we need to we're going to run into a situation where, hey, this isn't exactly the way we want. How are we going to still continue to achieve our own definitions of success in that situation? And I think that's one of the biggest things we can give kids. And that's really that resilience, that confidence.
Yeah, no, and it's funny. I like both of your definitions there. And Kyle, you talked about like a path for kids, and each kid's going to have a different path. Like, and that's just the way it is. And John, you talked about confidence, which I completely agree with, which is why this idea or this topic is weighing on me, because I think there's three different things that kids view as, or that kids get told about success.
Yeah, for sure.
The first one is their grade. Like, let's just be honest about that.
Of
Their
course.
grade, it kind of drives, especially an eighth grader. Like that's what they think about there. The second is, I think wherever you are, if you have any sort of state, or in the United States, state test or national test or whatever, I think administration looks at that and deems, hey, are your kids successful based off of that or not? And the thing I push back on that is, passing a test one time doesn't necessarily mean you completely understand the material. It's a one-time shot. Totally. And not passing a test one time also doesn't mean you don't understand material. Yeah. So it's kind of a flawed system there. But you have those two things, and then you have what you guys talked about, and what I think I talk about too, is this like growth piece, where I actually think my Math 8 students, even though they are not necessarily at the level of my algebra students, grew more. But here's like the conflicting parts here. I don't think necessarily the state test or the grades would reflect that.
Right.
So how do you keep the confidence up in them? And same thing with my algebra kids, like their grades are great for the most part, but I don't know if they truly understand as much. So just because their grades are up there, does that mean they're as successful as, say, a Math 8 student, who I have had Math 8 students in the past who don't understand the concept of multiplication? And we're trying to solve a multi-step equation.
Totally.
Like the grade in my eyes is, how well do you understand the multi-step equation? But you could have grown so much, and maybe you can solve a one-step equation now, but then your grade doesn't reflect that. You know, like how does all these pieces work together? That's the part that I'm having a hard time with.
Yeah, no, and you bring up so many great points here, and I think you're right. I think, I think the third point, your growth improvement, like that's what really matters, but it's not what's highlighted, right? And that's that, it's not as obvious. And we try to do that. And of course, with the whole growth mindset shift and all of those things, like we've tried in education to have growth mindset messages. We try to have all of these things, but then the first two sort of like squash that, right? Because all of a sudden it's like, well, this grade says this, the growth mindset message on the wall says that, but then the grade says this, the standardized test says this, and you're 100% right. And when I think about the growth piece as well, I love, John, your definition and focus on this idea of confidence, resilience, perseverance, like just getting students to know what they're capable of. And I think I wanted to almost piggyback what John said, to go all the way back to what I was saying, to suggest that if a student, let's say, goes from your Math 8 class, and then they go into Algebra 1, now the content has taken a step up. And in some cases too, the curriculum also puts you in a bad spot, because sometimes there's not a smooth shift, right, from one grade to the next. So it's not necessarily that you in this course didn't help to prepare those students. It's that there's like not an appropriate step to get to that place. It's like it's a leap, and some courses do that and some curriculums do that. But the part that I think would be, for me, what would be a success is if a student goes into that Algebra 1 course, or they go into, in a perfect world, I think it's more like Algebra 2 for me would be that like jump where students are starting to go like, I don't know if this is exactly like in my wheelhouse. Like, I'm not really interested in this, or, I'm going to start focusing in this area over here, which isn't necessarily like pure mathematics or whatever. I want a student to be able to have that confidence, that resilience, that, knowledge about themselves, to know themselves well enough that they're like, if I
Mhm.
wanted to dedicate the time and the effort, that I could do this. But I'm making a conscious decision that I am going to focus my time more so over here than over there. Like, I think for me, that would help me to be more okay with a student whose grade maybe goes down a little versus a student who's like, I just can't do it. I'm just not a math person. Like,
Right.
I've hit the end of the road for me, you know? Like, I want a student to know that it's like, you could do anything you want. It's like the student who says, I want to be an astronaut. I'm like, you sure as heck can. But guess what? If you're not focusing on being an astronaut for like the majority of your day, right? Which it means studying, which means like focusing on those things. Like, you can't just decide on Saturdays that you want to be an astronaut. Like, you have to truly want it. And I think the same is true here. Like, I would accept a student who's like, my grade went down a little bit, but you know what? I know that I could get that grade up, but I've been committing more time to my volleyball, travel volleyball schedule, and to the arts, and to this, I just don't want them to say, I can't do it anymore, or I'm incapable of actually doing that work. And to me, I think that is a massive win. Now, again, where do you find that, and how do you have that conversation? That would be more of a maneuver, right? For you as the educator to go, can I implement like some sort of survey, some sort of, data collection tool? And maybe it's even just a conversation, like a casual conversation that you aim to have at the start of a school year, right? And it might be like, hey, I want to talk to 2 kids per day for the first 15 days of school. So I'm going to aim to like have two times on the way into class. Hey, can I talk to you? And you ask them the same question, right? And you document that. And then you ask them, again, maybe near the end of the year. And maybe it's that measurement, right? To help you feel like, because, you've kind of highlighted a couple things here. You've highlighted that we've overemphasized grades. We've overemphasized standardized testing. And, the growth and improvement piece is something you're doing in your classroom, of course, and all teachers are trying to do. But I wonder, it's like, can you get some data that would help you feel like you're measuring the true success that matters to you, and not necessarily just that grade? Because that's going to happen. You're going to have some students where maybe things have shifted. Maybe they spend less time on math right now. But if at the end of the year, they're like, wow, Mr. Kinzler, like, in your class, I know that if I stick with it long enough, that I'll eventually get there, And like, to me, I'd be like, whoa, like that is a massive, massive win. It's more, I would take that any day over knowing the quadratic formula, or knowing, any of these sort of concepts that probably aren't going to actually reappear unless they're in a math course. But are, that problem solving, that resilience, that, stick-to-itiveness is something that they can take with them no matter what they do in life. And I don't know, like, I almost think like if students are thinking that way, and if you see your data is shifting, if you're doing those maneuvers in the school year all year long to shift students towards that thinking and that mindset, I'm going to guess that their grades are probably going to improve just as a byproduct. Not because, they're not getting confident because the grade's going up. It's like their grade would probably go up because they're confident that they're like, I can do this. Like, if I really, really want to, I can do this. I just have to commit to it. And know that, the answer will come, and the logic will come once I put enough work into it.
Yeah, no, I really like all of that. I think the piece that I'm kind of grabbing onto there is like I don't know the right word here. I want to say hope, but I don't know if hope's the right word, so I might change that later. But the hope to one day have success is greater than the belief that one day the success will come is greater than having success in the moment. And I think that we talk about so much, and I love your podcast about talking about making math moments, and we talk about how to create the moments. But then I don't know, and maybe I haven't listened to every single one, so maybe you guys have talked about this, but
maybe
what once you make that moment, like, how do you know if it did what you wanted it to do?
Mhm.
You know? And I think the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking there, Kyle, is sometimes growth doesn't mean you're always going up.
Totally.
Like, and sometimes you're gonna go this way a little bit because you're gonna change your direction and then come back up again. And I think that that's the part where kids get frustrated on this part, where maybe their grade is slipping and they're
Right.
putting their identity in that.
Mm.
Especially like, I'm just going to go with my algebra kids, like whatever everybody's thoughts are on tracking, it's the way it is right now in our district. And those algebra kids, their worth is in their grade. So when they start to struggle,
Yeah.
like it's not that they're not capable of doing it, it's that we're just trying to change their trajectory to go back up.
Right.
And I guess that's the part, now that I'm talking with you guys, that's the part that I'm struggling with. It's that initial like changing of the focus to come back up into the growth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I
Yep.
think this is the part where they're like, well, wait a second, my grades are falling. Wait a second, I'm not scoring advanced or proficient on my state test. I'm
Right
like
away.
basic now. Right.
Yeah.
And it's
yeah.
like, it's gonna come. You got to be patient.
And
And
that complexity, right?
Yeah.
Like you just think of like it gets complex fast, right? And
yeah,
you know, to think, yeah, I you know, I like, you know, for those who are listening and not watching, you know, Ryan's got his hands up and he's kind of showing this like valley, you know, like if
Yeah.
you're, you know, your grade, you see that dip, and over the years, you know, an 80 sometimes the next year turns into a 76, and you know, a 76 turns it, and it seems like if they start slipping, we'll call it, you know, that starts to decrease faster, you see, over time, and that's where students start to lose their confidence. But the part that we don't picture in our minds is like the graph of the complexity of the mathematics, and like the rigor, and like the amount of understanding and knowledge and new ideas that we're asking students to achieve in a short period of time. Like when you look at that graph, and it almost makes me wonder, is that even a good thought experiment for us as educators to do? Maybe Ryan, for you to do, like if you were to like look at your 8 and then your Algebra 1 curricula side by side, or your standards. And it doesn't have to be mathematically accurate, but like if you were to look at, like, we'll call it like the complexity curve of both, what does that look like? And could that curve be of value even as a start of the year conversation with your Algebra 1 students, where you go, hey, you're coming out of 8, and here's what I think 8 looks like on a complexity scale. Like, how many people felt, you know, some kids are like, oh, I thought it was easy. I thought, you know, like I didn't really have to work that hard. And you're like, okay, well, I want to show you the curve for this year, not to scare you. It's to prepare you that, you know, it's like when you see a trail and it says like, it's a difficult trail, right? And like, you gotta, like, you're going to be sweating by the time you get up this hiking path, because it's really steep, and there's rocks, and there's this, and there's that. And it's like, does that also help students to kind of frame themselves to go like, hey, wait a second, I came into this year expecting exactly what the experience I got last year. And maybe it's not quite like that, right? From this grade to that grade. And I know in Ontario here, you know, some of the courses, this happens a lot, from grade 3 to grade 4 is like a massive difference in the complexity, right? And they have standardized tests in grade 3, and then they have it in grade 6. And you see a massive drop in those standardized test scores. Well, we call it the abyss, like grade 4, 5, and 6. It's like all of a sudden the complexity, the multiplicative thinking explodes. So what does that look like from 8 to Algebra 1? And how might we as educators sort of like give students, you know, the image in their mind of like, okay, so you just went on the medium hiking trail, right? It was hard at times, but like this one, we're going to have like a lot more of those, right? Or, you know, here's where we want to be cautious, or here's where we want to make sure that, you know, we're not letting our practice slip, or we're not, you know, this, or we're not that. So that's sort of, you know, your visual that you gave me of that valley kind of immediately was like, oh, that could be really helpful for us.
Yeah. And just I think to add something that I've, for the last few years, you know, kept in my mind, especially think about those, you're trying to think, helping those students who are kind of on that valley part and kind of, you know, changing to kind of go back up, is students are going to, just because we've conditioned them, they are going to be attached to that grade, right? Like we have to report the grade. They're going to be attached to the grade. The parents are going to be attached to the grade. But what I've come to accept that part. But then I ask myself, like, what else could I bring into the classroom as something to continually give feedback on to my students? And because I guess it's this phrase that I've kind of been obsessed with, which is like, how do you reward the behavior you want and not the result? Because the result that we have to publish is a mark, right? Like kids, that's where that attachment comes to. But it's like, how can I pivot what's happening in my classroom? What are like my classroom pillars that I can continually give feedback to my students on? And how can I give feedback? Could I give it in writing? Could I give it in verbal? Could I actually assign some sort of new mark to the things that I value in class? Because that will reward their behavior. So when you see behavior, how can you reward that behavior so that the students know Mr. Kinzler thinks that thing is really important. He keeps giving me feedback on that thing or those two things or those three things. And he hasn't really commented on my mark, or, he doesn't say anything about marks in class. He comments on these three things always. And that can then be like that flywheel where it's like, now we've got like a little push this way. And it's like, all of a sudden it's like this, kids are starting to feel like, hey, these are the things that matter in class. These are the things that matter in class. And then that flywheel starts to kind of turn and take off. So it's like, what are the things, like, what are the things that we really value that we can actually put feedback and rewards, rewards into, that push this forward. This is, many years ago, Kyle and I started to transition away from making our students see the grade until it was, say, way up here. It was like, hey, we were grading on a level 1, 2, 3, 4 scale, and it's like we withheld grades, numbers, until they reached, say, the level 4, to say, hey, you know what, this is at at the standard now, or at the level of achievement we want to see. And we withheld that. We actually commented short little comments, short little verbal conversations to bring students to that level. And it was saying, like, set the bar here, and that's our goal to get to there. And it's kind of like we commented on the things that we valued about their perseverance, about, showcasing more of their learning. How can you write this, and how can you demonstrate this? And so I think it's what are the actions? I think if you want to think about it, like, list out the things that you want to value in class, and then like even little point forms underneath. What are some actual actions that you can take, this coming year that kind of help push those values a little further in your class, to kind of show a kid that you value that and not that thing over there?
Yeah, no, man, you guys threw a lot at me there. I just to kind of just go back, and even for me to collect my thoughts on this, Kyle, I think that what you said about the abyss there, I think that happens in Pennsylvania too. I can tell you that for sure, like 4, 5, 6. And I think that many students kind of form their, I guess, math identity, for a lack of a better term, there. It's like, either I did well or I didn't do well. And I think that's kind of hard to get them out of. And like, my mind's starting to go now kind of off what you said there, John, about emphasizing, like, can you say that quote again that you like?
It's basically just like, how can you reward the behavior and not the result?
Right. So, and this is even me saying, I think having success is having everyone up here, but maybe to go back to my like point here, and instead of, maybe success is to stop the downward. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Instead of looking at, look at all this growth.
Right.
Success could also be, well, maybe we're leveling out.
Totally.
And
now, how do we make that visible?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that kind of goes back to what you said about the grades. I have, in the past, I've started to like hide them. So like, whenever kids got a test back, they would automatically look at the grade and then nothing else. And that would drive me nuts.
Yeah.
So I would start to like hide the grade, so they'd have to like look through it. But maybe even withholding it, because that is something I do in my Math 8 class. Is I have this thing I call stars, where there's a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, and a level 4 for every single topic that we do throughout the year. And you get like each star, each topic's like 10 points, whatever, it doesn't matter. But you can keep redoing them the whole 9 weeks.
Love it.
Until you get to a definition or demonstrating that you understand to me that you grasp the concept. And obviously they get more difficult as you go, and the more stars you do, the higher your grade is in that spot. Well, I think that's where I see a lot of my growth in my Math 8 kids is because of that. And I actually started that 2 years ago after talking with you guys.
I love it.
So that growth piece there is maybe I need to get out of my head that maybe I'm part of the problem here, looking at these state test scores and saying, oh, wow, my algebra kids fell 200, my Math 8 kids raised 350, like hold off on that. Maybe my Math 8 kids are on the upward part now.
Right.
And my algebra kids, instead of going down, they've leveled off.
Totally.
And it's like, okay, that's okay, because now they have the opportunity to go up.
Now, and it's interesting too, like, you know, now you've said a lot of things that I really like. And I feel like this conversation, we could have a conversation all morning about this one. It's a really, you know, it's hit so many great key points. And I think, you know, you just, in my mind, I was picturing, you know, this idea of like, you know, you were talking about like almost like stopping the bleeding, right? Is something that we don't really have like a measure for in math class, right? But if you're skiing and, you know, somebody falls and like their skis are pointing downhill and they're like, they can't stop, you know, and it's like, just get them to turn and stop. That's like a win, right? You're like, woof, we stopped, you know, like you're still on the ground, but we've stopped. And the same is true. That's the vision I had in my head of like, you know, some of your students. And I think this grading system that you've been using, or feedback system, whatever you want to call it, in your 8 class is really helpful, because it allows you at like a more in the weeds opportunity for students to kind of figure out where are they. And then the other piece too is, you know, what is a reasonable level of success? Like for you and me and John, like we're going to go like 4 stars on everything. That is the level of success we want, right? But for some students, it's like, they're like, wow, like I've never had 2 stars before, you know, or, you know, in their mind, whatever that vision is. So that's a really hard place for us to be, is really looking at the student, each individual student, and where they are, and where on that curve are they, you know, were they on the downward slope for the past few years? And now you're trying to help them level off and, you know, build that confidence back. But then also when you look at the test scores for the state, let's say, what I would say is now you're looking at it from like a much higher level. So it's not that we want to ignore it. We want to throw it off to the side. We definitely don't want it to dictate our success, because there's so many other successes going on in your classroom, which may or may not show up in that test. And the other thing that's always hard is we don't know what that test score would be if you didn't have the successes you had. Right? Like how much worse would that test score be, right? Or how much lower could that test score be? However, if I can look at that data and I can try to find some of, you know, if I'm able to, if they have, you know, in different states and in different, you know, parts of the world, they have different levels of, you know, let's say openness with the questions, you know, and the materials. And, you know, if you can look at those and you start to try to analyze, like, is this a complexity issue where, you know, we've taken like a much more deeper dive in algebra 2 on that, you know, standardized test, and like the gap between the 8 and the algebra 1 is just massive. That's something for us to note. And then also to still help you kind of feed that want to set students up for success. Like you'll hear a lot of times, we've had episodes on them where we're like, it's not about, you know, getting them ready for next year, but in some ways it is, because, you know, you're like, listen, if I'm teaching this curriculum and I'm focusing so much time to make sure that these 8 students are doing really well in these areas, but maybe I could have taken some of that time to help them fill in some of the gaps that are going to happen, or those leaps that are happening between this curriculum or standards and the next year's standards. is there an opportunity for me to explore that, to like kind of look at where in algebra like are students, and this is looking at them as a whole and saying just as a whole we're all kind of struggling here. What is that most connected to? So we're doing really well, it seems, on the standardized test in grade 8, but then in algebra 1 it seems like we're actually falling. So like where is that fall happening? And are there some maneuvers I can do, right? These are like more like macro maneuvers I can do to go, where I'm seeing it, and I'm just going to guess that it's in probably algebra related concepts, right? Like algebraic reasoning and probably some of that, some of those pieces. Is there a place in my 8 curriculum where, you've probably done a good job to look at those standards and go, wow, like with dividing everything up the way I have, I've put myself in a position where the students are really successful in this course, but it's like, could they still be that successful while also being or getting more prepared for next year? Like, is there a gap there? Now, this isn't to put pressure on you to go, oh man, I have to redesign my whole curriculum, but it's like, if there's an opportunity for me to go, here's the place that I'm seeing, like, we pictured that hiking hill. When we get on that like difficult hike, here's where I see students in algebra 1 sort of falling or faltering. What's the step before that I might be able to more explicitly draw out here in 8 to give them a little bit? It's like training them before they go on the big hike. It's like, well, we were on the medium hill. Next year is going to be the difficult hill. Can we find like an in-between hill here, even though it's not explicitly in my curriculum, or it doesn't say I have to go that far? I don't have to necessarily evaluate it, but I can assess it, and I can provide students with maybe just that a little bit of, we'll call it like extra training before they set off on the big hike next year. And then maybe monitor that over the next school year and say like, did that help? Did my grade 8 scores go down now? And here's another interesting thing. Like, let's say some of your grade 8 scores did go down, but your algebra 1 scores went up, and you go, is that a worthwhile trade? I don't know, but maybe it is for you.
It almost sounds like, just to kind of encapsulate everything here, like, don't be afraid to open doors earlier for students. Like, you don't necessarily need to go full through them, but just open the door and let them see through it, because sometimes that's better than having to backtrack and go open up a previous door that should have been open that they didn't understand.
It's like, oh, don't go over there. That's only for the algebra 1 kids, we kind of protect them from it, right?
Like it kind of goes back to the path thing too. Like, expose them, let the students take their own path, but the more exposure they have, I don't want to say sooner, but earlier, I guess, it's almost more beneficial than having to backtrack. And then because when you're backtracking, you're probably going to lose the confidence.
Totally.
And when you're going forward, there's, I guess, curiosity there and a little bit more confidence that you can go through that door.
Right. Yeah. And the other piece too is like which, if you picture it as doors like you have, it's like you're in your current curriculum, and this might help you too, because you had said some topics you didn't explicitly, cover, like maybe you may have in the past. It's like, which of these doors are doors that we want to quickly walk through and walk out of, and then which doors are ones where like we really want to like spend some time, turn the light on, look around, make sure we really have a sense of this room. It's like you're in this museum and it's like, I really want to go see the Mona Lisa. I'm going to spend a lot of time there, but then I go in this other room, I'm like, these are nice but not that great. I'm going to move more quickly out of that door. And maybe entering into this other one over here, we were like, hey, listen, we're not going to spend too long in here, but I do want to, let you know that there's this thing over here. And next year we're going to spend a lot of time in there. But this year, I just want to give you the lay of the land. So don't get your confidence out. Like, I'm giving you next year's material. Like, you kids are so awesome that you can handle it. And we're going to like look at what those kids are doing, like what the big kids are doing.
Yeah. Because and you never know when you open a door, and you might leave it, but a kid might go back on their own. Totally. And like, that's their door. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
I think almost in talking with you guys, it's almost as if success, you can't necessarily define success as as based off of what you did or your class in general, success almost has its own definition for each individual student too.
For sure.
And
For sure.
when you're trying to quantify that as a general overall thing, it gets a little dicey because there's so many different layers there, and success for this student may look completely different than success for this student. So it's almost like case by case basis instead of a whole basis here. And that kind of goes back to the grades too. It's like it's a topic by topic basis, not necessarily the grade overall basis there that you have to look at. Like, look at all these topics that they did really well on. This topic they didn't do that as well on, so it dropped their grade a little bit. But overall, there's so much growth in that part that's what we should be focusing on.
Love
I
it.
love it.
Love it. Ryan,
That's like a big takeaway right there, John. I was going to ask for the big
I was going to
takeaway. I
say,
think he already,
you already jumped to
have
the
you
gun
been on
there,
this show
Kyle.
before, Ryan?
Yeah, I've listened to, a couple hundred, it's not.
There you go.
Ryan, yeah, big takeaway there. I think that you've had a lot of, big takeaways from this particular episode, and the listener at home is kind of going, yeah, what was my big takeaway? And they're kind of wondering that as well. So Ryan, we want to thank you for joining us once again, and I hope you're open to kind of joining us again. Let's say next year. We won't wait. We try not to wait 2 years this time. So every summer, it
is what it is.
we gotta make sure we get to you every summer so that we don't limit those terrible years. So thanks again for being here, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks for having me, guys. I enjoyed it very much.
Take care, Ryan. Thanks so much.
See you.